Maya stared at the gift certificate in her hands like it was a parking ticket. Piano lessons for beginners, it read in fancy gold letters. Her younger sister Priya sat across from her at the coffee shop, grinning like she'd just solved world hunger. "You hate it," Priya said, stirring her latte. "I don't hate it," Maya replied quickly. "It's just, why piano lessons? Because you need a hobby that doesn't involve spreadsheets or tax codes." Maya worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. Every day was the same routine. Wake up at 6:30, check emails, drive through traffic, spend 8 hours making sure numbers added up correctly, drive home through more traffic, eat dinner while watching Netflix, then sleep, repeat. It wasn't exciting, but it was predictable. Maya liked predictable. "I'm 28 years old," Maya said. "Isn't it too late to learn piano? Mrs. Johnson from my yoga class started violin at 65. She's pretty good now." "That's different. How?" Maya couldn't explain why it felt different. Maybe because Mrs. Johnson didn't have to worry about looking stupid in front of a bunch of teenagers who probably grew up with music lessons. Maybe because Maya had convinced herself long ago that she wasn't the creative type. Numbers made sense. Music was messy, but Priya had spent her own money on these lessons. The gift certificate was for 4 weeks of beginner classes at the Riverside Community Center. "It would be rude to waste it." "Fine," Maya said. "But when I'm terrible at it, I'm blaming you." The following Tuesday evening, Maya found herself standing outside room 12 at the community center. Through the small window in the door, she could see a circle of folding chairs and a digital piano on wheels. A few people were already sitting down. A teenage boy with headphones around his neck, an older woman with gray hair, and a young mom who kept checking her phone. Maya almost turned around and left. She could tell Priya the classes were full, or canceled, or that she'd mixed up the dates. Instead, she took a deep breath and opened the door. "You must be Maya," said a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I'm Mr. Chen. Welcome to our little musical family." "Musical family?" Maya cringed internally but smiled politely. "I should mention," she said, "I've never played piano before. Like never touched one." "Perfect," Mr. Chen said. "That means we get to start fresh. No bad habits to break." The class was smaller than Maya expected. Besides herself, there were 5 other students. The teenage boy Alex had played guitar for years but wanted to try piano. The older woman, Mrs. Peterson, was retired and always wanted to learn. The young mom, Lisa, said music helped her relax after long days with her toddler. There was also David, a college student studying engineering, and Rosa, who worked at the local library. Maya felt slightly better knowing she wasn't the only complete beginner. Mr. Chen started with the basics. He showed them how to sit properly, back straight, feet flat on the floor, hands curved like they were holding small balls. Then he pointed out the keys. "Piano has 88 keys," he explained. "But don't worry, we're not learning all of them today." Everyone laughed except Maya, who was already feeling overwhelmed. They learned about middle C, the white key just to the left of a group of 2 black keys in the center of the piano. It seemed simple enough until Mr. Chen asked them to find it with their eyes closed. Maya's hand wandered around the keys like she was looking for her car keys in a dark purse. When she finally thought she'd found middle C and opened her eyes, her finger was resting on F sharp. "Close," Mr. Chen said encouragingly. "Try again." By the end of the first lesson, Maya had learned to play middle C with her right thumb. Just one note. For 30 seconds, she felt proud of herself. Then Alex played a simple melody he'd figured out by ear, and Maya remembered why she usually stuck to things she was already good at. Walking to her car after class, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Priya. "How was your first lesson?" "Are you the next Mozart yet?" Maya typed back. More like the next person to give up after week 1. But something strange happened the next day at work. During her lunch break, instead of scrolling through social media, Maya found herself watching YouTube videos about piano basics. She learned that the black keys had names too, sharps and flats. She discovered that piano music was written on something called a staff, with little oval notes that told you which keys to press. It was like learning a new language, except instead of words, it was sounds. That evening, Maya practiced finding middle C on her kitchen table, pretending the edge was a piano. Her fingers moved in the curved position Mr. Chen had shown them. She felt silly but also curious. The second lesson was about rhythm. Mr. Chen had them clap along to different beats, quarter notes, half notes, whole notes. Maya's accounting brain actually liked this part. It was mathematical, organized. 4 beats per measure, like 4 quarters in a dollar. But when they moved to the piano and tried to play simple rhythms with their right hand, Maya's coordination fell apart. Her brain knew what to do, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate. It was like trying to pat her head and rub her stomach at the same time. "Don't worry," Mr. Chen said, noticing her frustration. "Your brain is building new pathways right now. It takes time." "How much time?" Maya asked. "Different for everyone. Some people pick it up quickly, others need more practice. The important thing is to be patient with yourself." Maya wasn't good at being patient with herself. At work, if she couldn't figure out a problem quickly, she'd research it until she found the answer. If a formula didn't work, she'd try different approaches until something clicked. But piano felt different. Messier, less logical. After the 3rd lesson, Maya could play a simple 5-note scale with her right hand. It wasn't pretty and it definitely wasn't smooth, but all 5 notes were correct. Mrs. Peterson played the same scale and it sounded like music. When Maya played it, it sounded like someone dropping coins on a table one at a time. "I think I'm tone deaf," Maya told Mr. Chen after class. "You're not tone deaf," he replied. "You're just learning. Your ears need time to develop just like your fingers. But everyone else is getting better faster than me." Mr. Chen glanced around the empty classroom. "Can I tell you something? Alex has been playing guitar for 6 years. Music isn't new to him. Mrs. Peterson took piano lessons as a child even though she says she forgot everything. David has perfect pitch, he was born with it. And Lisa's daughter takes violin lessons so she hears music at home every day. What about Rosa? Rosa practices 2 hours every night." Maya felt a little better knowing everyone else had advantages she didn't have. But she also felt more determined than before. If Rosa could practice 2 hours a night while working full-time at the library, Maya could certainly manage 30 minutes a few times a week. That night, she looked up piano practice videos online and discovered something interesting. There were apps that could turn your phone into a simple keyboard. It wasn't the same as a real piano, but it was better than practicing on her kitchen table. As Maya fell asleep that night, she found herself humming the 5-note scale they'd learned in class. It was the first time in years she'd gone to bed with music in her head instead of work stress. Maybe this piano thing wasn't such a crazy idea after all. 3 weeks into her piano lessons, Maya was starting to understand why most people quit learning instruments as adults. Her fingers felt like they belonged to someone else. Simple songs that children could probably play with their eyes closed left her sweating and frustrated. During the 4th lesson, Mr. Chen introduced them to playing with both hands at the same time. The left hand was supposed to play simple bass notes while the right hand played the melody. It sounded easy when he demonstrated it. When Maya tried, it was like trying to write her name with her right hand while drawing circles with her left. "This is impossible," she muttered under her breath. Alex, sitting at the piano next to her, was already playing a basic version of Twinkle. Twinkle, Little Star with both hands. It wasn't perfect, but it was recognizable. Maya's attempt sounded like a musical car accident. "Remember," Mr. Chen said gently, "your brain is learning to do something it's never done before. It's like learning to drive. At first everything feels overwhelming, but eventually it becomes automatic." Maya wanted to believe him, but driving had made sense from the beginning. Gas pedal makes the car go forward. Brake pedal makes it stop. Steering wheel changes direction. Piano seemed to have no logical rules. Why was this note called B flat instead of A sharp? Why did some keys sound good together while others sounded terrible? Why did her pinky finger refuse to press keys independently from her ring finger? After class, Maya walked to her car feeling defeated. Rosa caught up with her in the parking lot. "Rough night?" Rosa asked. "I'm thinking about quitting," Maya admitted. "Everyone else is getting better and I'm still struggling with basics." Rosa laughed. "Are you kidding? 3 weeks ago you didn't know where middle C was. Now you can play a scale? Barely. But you can do it. Look, I've been playing for a month longer than you, and I still can't get my left hand to cooperate. Last night I practiced the same 4 measures for an hour. An hour? On 4 measures? Yep, and you know what? By the end of that hour I could play them without thinking about it. That's how it works. Lots of repetition until your muscles remember what to do." Maya drove home thinking about what Rosa had said. Maybe she was expecting too much too quickly. In accounting, she could usually figure out problems by thinking through them logically. Piano seemed to require a different kind of learning, one that happened in her muscles and ears rather than just her brain. The next evening, Maya was doing laundry in the basement of her apartment building when she noticed something she'd never paid attention to before. In the corner of the recreation room, covered with a dusty sheet, sat an old upright piano. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then walked over and lifted the corner of the sheet. The piano was old and had some scratches on the wood, but the keys looked intact. She pressed middle C very softly. It was slightly out of tune, but it made a real piano sound, much better than the app on her phone. Maya glanced toward the stairs, listening for footsteps. The basement was empty. Most people were upstairs having dinner or watching TV. She sat on the small bench and tried to play the scale she'd been practicing. It was easier than she expected. The keys had the right weight and resistance, unlike the digital piano in class or the app on her phone. Her fingers seemed to know where to go without her having to think about it as much. Encouraged, she tried playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with just her right hand. It was slow and hesitant, but all the notes were correct. Then she attempted to add the simple left-hand part Mr. Chen had shown them. The first few tries were disasters. But something about practicing alone where no one could hear her mistakes made it easier to experiment. She could stop and start without feeling embarrassed. She could play the same phrase over and over until it started to sound right. After about 20 minutes, she managed to play the entire song with both hands. It wasn't smooth and it wasn't pretty, but it was recognizable. For the first time since starting lessons, Maya felt genuinely proud of something she'd accomplished on piano. From that night on, Maya found excuses to go to the basement. She'd take her laundry down even when she only had a few items to wash. She'd volunteer to check the storage unit. She'd offer to help neighbors carry things downstairs. Each time she'd spend a few minutes at the piano, sometimes just 5 minutes if other people were around, sometimes 20 or 30 minutes if she had the basement to herself. The piano became her secret. She didn't tell Priya about it or mention it to her coworkers or bring it up in class. It felt too fragile and new to share with anyone else. During her lunch breaks at work, Maya started watching more YouTube videos about piano playing. She learned about finger positioning and proper posture. She discovered that there were exercises specifically designed to help fingers move independently. She found simple songs that were slightly more challenging than what they were learning in class. One evening, about 6 weeks into her lessons, Maya was practicing in the basement when she heard footsteps on the stairs. She quickly pulled her hands away from the keys and pretended to be folding laundry. An elderly man she'd seen around the building appeared at the bottom of the stairs, carrying a basket of clothes. "Oh," he said, noticing the uncovered piano. "Someone's been playing Old Betsy." Maya felt her face turn red. "I'm sorry, I didn't know if it was okay to—" "Of course it's okay," the man said. "That's what she's there for. I'm Jim, by the way. I live in 3B. Maya, 2A. Is it your piano?" Jim laughed. "Goodness, no. The building association put it down here years ago when the community room was renovated. Been hoping someone would use it." "Are you taking lessons?" "Just started a couple months ago." "Well, you sound pretty good. I heard you playing that children's song. Brought back memories of my kids learning piano years ago." Maya was surprised. She thought she was being quiet enough that no one could hear. "The sound doesn't carry upstairs," Jim explained, reading her expression. "But down here the acoustics are pretty good. You should come practice more often. Betsy needs the exercise." After Jim left, Maya sat back down at the piano, feeling lighter somehow. She wasn't sneaking around or doing anything wrong. The piano was there for residents to use, and she was a resident. That night she spent almost an hour practicing. She worked on the songs from class until she could play them smoothly. Then she tried some of the exercises she'd learned about online. Her fingers were getting stronger, and the movements that had felt impossible a few weeks ago were starting to feel natural. The next week in class, Mr. Chen noticed the improvement immediately. "Maya, you've been practicing," he said after she played through "Mary Had a Little Lamb" without any mistakes. "A little bit," she said modestly. "It shows. Your timing is much better, and your fingers are moving more independently. Keep up whatever you're doing." Maya felt a warm glow of pride. For the first time since starting piano lessons, she was keeping up with the rest of the class. Alex was still ahead of everyone. and Mrs. Peterson's years of childhood lessons still gave her an advantage. But Maya was no longer the struggling beginner who couldn't find middle C. More importantly, she was starting to enjoy it. The basement piano sessions had become the highlight of her day. After 8 hours of dealing with numbers and deadlines, sitting at the piano felt like meditation. Her mind would quiet down, and for a little while nothing existed except the music and her fingers on the keys. She still made plenty of mistakes. She still got frustrated when her hands wouldn't do what her brain wanted them to do, but now she understood what Mr. Chen meant about building new pathways in her brain. Each day the movements felt a little more natural. Each practice session, the music sounded a little less like random noise and more like actual songs. Maya was starting to realize that maybe she wasn't as tone-deaf and unmusical as she'd always believed. Maybe she just needed time, patience, and a quiet basement piano to discover what was possible. 3 months into her piano journey, Maya felt like she'd hit a wall. She could play the beginner songs from class without mistakes, and her basement practice sessions had become a comfortable routine. But something was missing. The music sounded correct but empty, like she was following a recipe without understanding what made the food actually taste good. In class that Tuesday evening, Mr. Chen introduced them to a new piece called Ode to Joy by Beethoven. It was more challenging than anything they'd attempted before, with a flowing melody that required smooth finger movements and careful attention to timing. This piece is about expressing emotion through music, Mr. Chen explained. Don't just play the notes. Try to feel what Beethoven was trying to communicate. Maya stared at the sheet music. Feel what Beethoven was trying to communicate. She was still working on getting her fingers to press the right keys at the right time. How was she supposed to worry about emotions, too? She watched as Alex played through the first few measures. Even though he made some mistakes, there was something musical about his playing. The notes seemed to connect to each other, flowing like a conversation. When it was Maya's turn, she approached the piece like she approached everything else, methodically and carefully. She played each note precisely, counted the beats in her head, and made sure her fingering was correct. Technically, it was accurate, but it sounded mechanical like a player piano. Good technique, Mr. Chen said when she finished. Now try it again, but this time don't think about the individual notes. Think about the phrase as a whole. Imagine you're telling a story. Maya tried again, but her brain couldn't let go of the technical details. She was too worried about hitting the wrong notes to think about storytelling. After class, she felt frustrated in a new way. For the first time, playing correctly wasn't enough. There was something more that everyone else seemed to understand instinctively, and Maya couldn't figure out what it was. That night in the basement, she sat at the old piano staring at the Ode to Joy sheet music. She played through it several times, focusing on getting every note perfect, but each time it sounded the same, correct but lifeless. She was about to give up when she remembered something Mr. Chen had said weeks earlier. Music is a language. Before you can speak a language fluently, you have to stop translating every word in your head. Maya realized that's exactly what she was doing, translating every note from the page to her fingers without ever letting the music flow naturally. She was so focused on the mechanics that she was missing the point entirely. She decided to try something different. Instead of looking at the sheet music, she closed her eyes and tried to remember how the melody sounded when Alex played it. Not the individual notes, but the shape of the music. How it started quietly, built up to a peak, then settled back down. With her eyes still closed, she began playing by memory. Without the visual distraction of the sheet music, something shifted. Her hands seemed to find the keys on their own, and for the first time, she could hear the melody as a complete thought rather than a series of separate notes. She made mistakes, quite a few of them, but the music still made sense. It had a beginning, middle, and end. It told a story. When she opened her eyes, she felt like something had fundamentally changed. It was as if she'd been looking at a puzzle one piece at a time, and suddenly she could see the whole picture. She played the piece again, this time with the sheet music, but without getting lost in the technical details. Instead of thinking about finger positions and note names, she focused on the emotional arc of the melody. The music began to breathe. It had moments of tension and release, questions and answers. For the next hour, Maya practiced Ode to Joy with a completely different mindset. Instead of trying to perfect every note, she worked on making the music flow. She experimented with playing some parts a little louder, others a little softer, She tried to make the transitions between phrases sound smooth and natural. By the end of the practice session, she wasn't just playing the notes, she was making music. The breakthrough affected everything else too. The simple songs she'd already learned suddenly sounded different when she approached them as complete musical thoughts rather than technical exercises. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star became a gentle lullaby. Mary Had a Little Lamb told the story of a playful child and her pet. At work the next day, Maya found herself humming melodies from her lesson. Her co-worker Janet noticed. "You seem different lately," Janet said during their coffee break. "More, I don't know, relaxed?" Maya was surprised. She hadn't realized the change was visible to others. "I've been taking piano lessons." "Really? That's so cool. Are you enjoying it?" "I am, actually. More than I expected. My daughter takes violin lessons, and her teacher always says music is good for the brain. Something about using both sides at the same time." Maya had never thought about it that way, but it made sense. At work, she used the logical, analytical side of her brain all day. Piano seemed to engage a completely different part of her mind, the part that dealt with emotions and creativity and beauty. That evening's lesson was a revelation. When Maya played Ode to Joy, Mr. Chen's face lit up. "Now that's what I'm talking about," he said. "You're not just playing notes anymore, you're making music." "What changed?" Maya tried to explain about closing her eyes and focusing on the melody as a whole instead of individual notes. Mr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly right. You've discovered the difference between playing piano and making music. The technical skills are important, they're the foundation. But music happens when you stop thinking about the foundation and start building something beautiful on top of it." The other students noticed the difference too. Rosa commented that Maya's playing sounded much more confident. Mrs. Peterson said it was lovely to hear the music coming alive under her fingers. Even Alex, who rarely commented on other people's playing, said, "You're really getting it now. That sounded like actual Beethoven." Maya felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd experienced in her accounting career. When she balanced a difficult set of books or found an error that had been overlooked for months, she felt satisfied. But this was different. This felt like she'd discovered a part of herself that had been sleeping for 28 years. Walking to her car after class, Maya realized she was already looking forward to her next basement practice session. For the first time since starting lessons, she wasn't going to practice because she felt obligated to improve. She was going to practice because she wanted to make more music. She also realized she was starting to think differently about challenges in general. The breakthrough with Ode to Joy hadn't happened because she'd tried harder or practiced longer. It had happened because she'd changed her approach, stopped trying to control every detail and started trusting herself to let the music flow. Maybe that lesson applied to other areas of her life too. Maybe sometimes the answer wasn't to work harder or analyze more, but to step back and look at the bigger picture. That night, as Maya sat at the old basement piano, she played Ode to Joy one more time. But this time, she wasn't just playing a song she'd learned in class. She was expressing something beautiful and meaningful that connected her to a composer who had lived 200 years ago. For the first time in her life, Maya understood what people meant when they talked about the magic of music. It wasn't magic at all. It was communication across time and space, emotion shared through sound. The human experience translated into a language that everyone could understand. And somehow, impossibly, she was beginning to speak that language herself. Maya's secret was getting harder to keep. 2 weeks after her breakthrough with Ode to Joy, she found herself staying in the basement for over an hour each night. What started as simple practice sessions had evolved into something much more adventurous. She'd discovered that the old piano's bench had a storage compartment filled with sheet music from previous residents. Most of it was far beyond her skill level, complex classical pieces with intimidating titles and dense pages of notes. But one piece had caught her attention, Chopin's Minute Waltz. Maya knew she had no business attempting Chopin. In class, they were still working on simple folk songs and basic classical pieces. But something about the waltz fascinated her. She'd found a recording online and listened to it dozens of times. The melody was playful and elegant, with a flowing rhythm that made her think of dancing. Against her better judgment, she'd started trying to learn it piece by piece. Just the right-hand melody at first, playing it slowly and figuring out the fingering, then gradually adding some of the left-hand accompaniment. It was incredibly challenging, far more difficult than anything Mr. Chen had assigned. But it was also exhilarating. The problem was that her rapid improvement was becoming obvious in class. The previous week, Mr. Chen had introduced a new piece that was supposed to challenge them, and Maya had played through it almost perfectly on her first try. She could see the surprise in his eyes. "Maya," he said after class, "can I talk to you for a moment?" Maya's heart sank. She was sure he was going to ask her what was going on, and she wasn't ready to explain about the basement piano or the secret practice sessions or the Chopin piece that was way above her supposed skill level. "I've noticed some significant improvement in your playing lately," Mr. Chen began. "Your technique has advanced much faster than I would normally expect for someone at your stage." "Is that bad?" Maya asked nervously. Mr. Chen laughed. "Bad? No, it's wonderful. I'm just curious. Have you been practicing more than you mentioned? Perhaps taking additional lessons somewhere else?" Maya felt her face flush. "No additional lessons. I found a piano I can practice on at home." "That makes a big difference," Mr. Chen said. "Access to a real piano instead of just practicing on apps or keyboards. But even so, your progress has been remarkable. You're playing with a level of musicality that usually takes much longer to develop." Maya wasn't sure how to respond. She felt like she was living a double life. The careful beginner in class and the adventurous explorer in the basement. "Would you mind playing something for me?" Mr. Chen asked. "Not from our class materials. Something you've been working on at home." Maya's mouth went dry. This was exactly what she'd been hoping to avoid. But Mr. Chen was looking at her with such genuine curiosity and encouragement that she found herself nodding. "There's one piece I've been trying to learn," she said slowly, "but it's probably too difficult for where I'm supposed to be. Let me be the judge of that." Maya sat down at the digital piano and took a deep breath. She started with the opening measures of the Minute Waltz, just the melody, played slowly and carefully. Even at half speed, the piece was recognizable and beautiful. Mr. Chen's eyebrows rose, but he didn't interrupt. Maya continued, adding some of the left-hand accompaniment she'd managed to figure out. Her fingers stumbled in a few places, and she had to slow down for the more complex passages. But the music was unmistakably Chopin. When she finished the section she'd learned, the room was quiet for a long moment. "Maya," Mr. Chen said finally, "that was Chopin's Minute Waltz." "I know it's too advanced," she said quickly. "I just really liked how it sounded, and I wanted to try." "How long have you been working on this piece?" "About 2 weeks. Just a little bit each day." Mr. Chen shook his head in amazement. "This piece is typically assigned to students who have been playing for several years. The fact that you can play even part of it after 4 months of lessons is, well, it's extraordinary." Maya felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. "I probably shouldn't have tried something so difficult. On the contrary, you should absolutely be trying challenging pieces. That's clearly how you learn best." Mr. Chen paused, studying her carefully. "Can I ask you something? What made you choose this particular piece?" Maya thought about how to explain it. "When I heard it online, it made me feel happy, I guess. Like I was floating. And when I'm playing it even badly, I feel that same feeling, like the music is carrying me somewhere else. That's exactly how music should make you feel," Mr. Chen said softly. "You've discovered something that many students never find. The emotional connection that transforms notes on a page into something meaningful." He was quiet for a moment, then continued. "Maya, I think we need to talk about your goals with piano. When you started, I assumed you wanted to learn some simple songs as a hobby, but what you just played suggests you might be capable of much more than that." "What do you mean?" "I mean you have natural musical instincts that can't be taught. The way you phrase the melody, the subtle way you shape the rhythm, those are advanced skills that usually take years to develop. Combined with your obvious dedication to practicing, I think you could progress much faster than the typical beginner track." Maya felt overwhelmed. "But I just started 4 months ago. I don't know anything about music theory or proper technique or—" "Those things can be learned," Mr. Chen interrupted. "What you have, the musical intuition, the emotional connection, the willingness to challenge yourself, those are much rarer gifts." He suggested that Maya consider switching to private lessons instead of the group beginner class. "You're ready for more individualized instruction and more challenging repertoire. The group class is wonderful for getting started, but I think you've outgrown it." Maya wasn't sure how to feel about this suggestion. Part of her was thrilled by the recognition of her progress, but another part of her worried about taking on something too advanced, too serious. She'd started piano lessons as a simple hobby, something to do besides work. Now Mr. Chen was talking about her like she had real musical potential. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. But Maya, can I give you some advice? Don't underestimate yourself. You've made more progress in 4 months than most students make in their first year. That's not luck or accident, that's talent combined with hard work." Driving home that night, Maya's head was spinning. She'd gone from feeling like the worst student in class to being told she might be ready for advanced instruction. It was exciting and terrifying at the same time. That evening in the basement, she sat at the piano but didn't immediately start playing. Instead, she thought about what Mr. Chen had said about natural musical instincts. She'd never considered herself naturally talented at anything creative. She was good at her job because she was careful and methodical. Not because she had special gifts, but maybe those same qualities that made her a good accountant, attention to detail, patience, persistence, were also helping her learn piano. And maybe the emotional connection she felt to music was something she'd always had but never explored. She began playing the Minute Waltz again. But this time she wasn't thinking about whether it was too advanced for her level. She was just enjoying the way the melody danced under her fingers, the way the rhythm made her want to sway back and forth, the way the music transported her to a world where numbers and deadlines didn't exist. As she played, Maya realized that Mr. Chen was right about one thing. She had been underestimating herself. Not just with piano, but in general. She'd spent so many years being practical and cautious that she'd forgotten how good it felt to challenge herself, to attempt something difficult just because it brought her joy. Maybe it was time to stop hiding her progress and start embracing it. Maybe it was time to find out just how far this unexpected musical journey could take her. Maya spent the entire week thinking about Mr. Chen's suggestion. Private lessons felt like crossing a line from casual hobby to serious pursuit. It would mean admitting that piano had become more than just a way to fill her evenings. It had become something she genuinely cared about. She decided to talk to Priya about it over their usual Saturday morning coffee. "So my piano teacher thinks I should switch to private lessons," Maya said, trying to sound casual. Priya nearly choked on her latte. "Wait, what? Last time we talked about this, you were complaining about not being able to play 'Mary Had a Little Lamb' properly." "That was 3 months ago." "Show me," Priya demanded, pulling out her phone. "Play something. Here. In the coffee shop. There's a piano app. Come on. I want to hear how good you've gotten." Maya reluctantly took the phone and opened the piano app. She played a simplified version of Ode to Joy, trying to ignore the curious looks from other customers. Even on the tiny phone screen, the melody was recognizable and musical. Priya stared at her sister like she'd grown a second head. "Okay, that was actually really pretty. When did you get so good?" "I've been practicing more than I mentioned." "How much more?" Maya admitted to the basement piano and the nightly practice sessions. She told Priya about the breakthrough moment and the Chopin piece she'd been secretly learning. "You've been learning Chopin?" Priya said, her voice rising an octave. "Isn't that like concert pianist stuff?" "Not really. I mean, yes, it's challenging, but it's not impossible. The piece I'm working on is actually one of his easier ones." Priya shook her head in amazement. "I can't believe you've been keeping this secret. Why didn't you tell me?" Maya tried to explain how the piano had started as something private and personal, how she hadn't wanted to make a big deal about it in case she quit or turned out to be terrible at it. But somewhere along the way, it had become the most important part of her day. "So are you going to do the private lessons?" Priya asked. "I don't know. It feels like such a big step. Bigger than secretly becoming good enough to play Chopin in 4 months?" Maya laughed. "When you put it that way." That Monday, she called Mr. Chen and scheduled a time to discuss private lessons. They met at the community center during his office hours, and he explained what individual instruction would involve. "We'd meet once a week, just like now, but the lessons would be tailored specifically to your pace and interests," he said. "We could work on pieces you're drawn to, develop your technique more systematically, and introduce you to more advanced musical concepts." "What kind of pieces are we talking about?" Mr. Chen pulled out a thick book of sheet music. "Well, given your interest in Chopin, we might explore some of his easier waltzes and nocturnes. There's also beautiful music by Debussy, Grieg, and Bach that I think you'd enjoy." We could work on whatever speaks to you. Maya flipped through the book, recognizing some of the titles from her online research. The music looked impossibly complex, but then again, so had the Minute Waltz when she'd first seen it. There's something else I'd like you to consider, Mr. Chen continued. The community center is having its annual student recital in 2 months. I think you should participate. Maya's stomach dropped. A recital? Like performing in front of people? It's very informal. Just students and their families, maybe 40 or 50 people. Everyone performs a piece they've been working on. It's a wonderful way to set a goal and work towards something concrete. I couldn't possibly— Maya, you're already playing at a level where performance is appropriate. And I think having a deadline would motivate you to really polish a piece to performance quality. The idea of performing in public terrified Maya. She'd spent months hiding her progress, practicing in secret, keeping her musical journey private. The thought of playing in front of strangers made her palms sweat. But there was also something appealing about having a clear goal to work toward. In her accounting work, she always had deadlines and targets. Maybe music would benefit from the same kind of structure. What would I play? She asked hesitantly. That's entirely up to you. It could be the Chopin piece you've been working on, or we could choose something new together. The important thing is that it's a piece you connect with emotionally. Maya thought about the music she'd been exploring in the basement. Besides the Minute Waltz, she'd been drawn to a piece by Debussy called Clair de Lune. She'd only heard it online, but the melody was hauntingly beautiful, mysterious and dreamy in a way that made her think of moonlight on water. There's a Debussy piece I've been curious about, she said quietly. Mr. Chen's eyes lit up. Which one? Clair de Lune. Oh, that's a gorgeous choice. More challenging than the Chopin in some ways, but absolutely manageable with proper preparation. The emotional depth of that piece would be perfect for showcasing your musical maturity. They spent the next hour discussing the details. Private lessons would start immediately, meeting at the same time as her old group class. They would spend the first few weeks assessing her current skills and identifying areas for improvement. Then they'd begin serious work on Clair de Lune with the goal of having it performance-ready in 2 months. Maya left the meeting feeling excited and terrified in equal measure. She'd committed to private lessons, chosen an ambitious piece, and agreed to perform in public. 6 months ago, she could never have imagined making such decisions. That evening, she sat in the basement with a printed copy of Clair de Lune that Mr. Chen had given her. The sheet music was more complex than anything she'd attempted. Multiple staves, intricate rhythms, and dynamic markings she didn't fully understand yet. She started by just reading through the music, not trying to play it but trying to understand its structure. The piece began quietly and mysteriously, built to a passionate climax, then settled back into peaceful contemplation. Even on paper, she could see the emotional arc that the music would follow. When she finally tried to play the opening measures, her fingers moved slowly and uncertainly. The rhythms were subtle, and the harmonies were more complex than anything she'd learned before. But underneath the technical challenges, she could hear the beauty that had drawn her to the piece. Maya realized she was embarking on something completely different from her previous piano experiences. Learning Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star had been about developing basic skills. Even the Chopin piece had been about pushing her technical boundaries. But Clair de Lune was about something deeper, expressing complex emotions through music, communicating feelings that couldn't be put into words. As she practiced that night, Maya thought about how much her life had changed since Priya had given her that gift certificate. She'd started piano lessons reluctantly, thinking she had no musical talent. Now she was preparing for private instruction and planning to perform one of the most beautiful pieces in the classical repertoire. More importantly, she discovered a part of herself she never knew existed. The woman who spent her days working with numbers and spreadsheets was also someone who could be moved to tears by a beautiful melody, who could spend hours perfecting a single phrase of music, who had the patience and passion to tackle challenges that would have seemed impossible just months before. The recital was still 2 months away, but Maya was already thinking beyond it. What other pieces might she learn? How far could she push herself musically? What other hidden talents might be waiting to be discovered? For the first time in her adult life, Maya felt like she was just getting started rather than settling into a comfortable routine. The future was full of possibilities she'd never considered before, And it all began with a piano and the courage to accept a challenge that scared her. The first private lesson revealed just how much Maya still had to learn. Mr. Chen spent the entire session assessing her technique, identifying habits she'd developed during her months of self-directed practice in the basement. "Your musical instincts are excellent," he said, "but we need to work on some fundamentals. You've taught yourself to play with tension in your shoulders, and your left-hand positioning could be more efficient." Maya felt discouraged. She'd thought she was doing well, but apparently she'd been making mistakes this whole time. "Don't look so worried," Mr. Chen said, noticing her expression. "What you've accomplished on your own is remarkable. But now we're going to build on that foundation and help you reach the next level. Think of it like renovating a house. The structure is solid, we're just updating some of the details." They spent the lesson working on proper posture and hand position. Maya had to unlearn some of the habits she'd developed, which felt like taking a step backward. Simple exercises that should have been easy became challenging when she focused on maintaining proper form. "This feels harder than before," she complained after struggling through a basic scale. "That's normal," Mr. Chen assured her. "You're building muscle memory for more efficient movements. It'll feel awkward for a few weeks, then suddenly everything will be easier than it was before." At the end of the lesson, they looked at Clair de Lune together. The sheet music was intimidating. 4 pages of complex rhythms, delicate phrasings, and technical passages that required precise finger coordination. "We'll learn it in small sections," Mr. Chen explained. "Just a few measures at a time, working on getting each phrase musically polished before moving on." Quality over quantity. Maya's homework for the week was surprisingly modest. Practice proper posture and hand position for 15 minutes each day, then work on just the first 8 measures of Clair de Lune. It seemed like too little to accomplish anything significant, but Mr. Chen was right about the value of focused practice. After a week of working on those 8 measures with proper technique, Maya could play them more smoothly and expressively than entire pieces she'd learned before. The music had a depth and sophistication that came from attention to every detail. The second week, they added the next phrase. Maya was starting to understand how Clair de Lune was constructed, each section built on the previous one, with themes that returned in slightly different forms throughout the piece. It was like reading a poem where each stanza revealed new layers of meaning, but learning the piece was only part of the challenge. Maya was also dealing with the growing pressure of knowing she'd committed to performing it in public. During her lunch breaks at work, she found herself imagining the recital, sitting at a piano in front of an audience, trying to remember the notes while people watched and judged her playing. The anxiety was affecting her practice. Some nights, she'd sit at the basement piano and her fingers would shake before she even started playing. Other times, she'd play through a section perfectly several times, then make a silly mistake and worry that she'd do the same thing during the performance. 3 weeks into intensive preparation, Maya had a particularly frustrating practice session. She'd been working on a challenging passage in the middle of the piece, a section where the melody soared over complex left-hand arpeggios. She'd practiced it slowly dozens of times and could play it perfectly at half speed. But when she tried to play it at the proper tempo, her fingers kept getting tangled. After the 5th failed attempt, Maya slammed her hands down on the keys in frustration. "I can't do this," she said aloud to the empty basement. "This piece is too hard. I'm going to embarrass myself at the recital." She was on the verge of calling Mr. Chen to withdraw from the performance when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Jim appeared carrying his usual basket of laundry. "Rough night?" he asked, noticing her expression. Maya nodded, feeling tears threatening to spill over. "I'm supposed to perform this piece in a month and I can't even play it properly in private." "Mind if I listen?" Jim asked. "Sometimes it helps to have an audience, even if it's just an old guy doing his washing." Maya hesitated. She'd never played for anyone except Mr. Chen and the other students in class, but Jim had been nothing but encouraging about her practicing, and she was too discouraged to care about making mistakes. "It's going to be terrible," she warned. "I doubt that." Maya started from the beginning of Clair de Lune, playing slowly and carefully. To her surprise, having someone listen actually helped her focus. Instead of worrying about the difficult passage ahead, she concentrated on making each phrase as beautiful as possible in the moment. When she reached the challenging section, she played it at the slow tempo where she was confident. It wasn't the proper speed, but the music was clear and expressive. That was lovely, Jim said when she finished. What piece was that? Clair de Lune by Debussy. But I played it too slowly. It didn't sound too slow to me. It sounded thoughtful, like you were taking time to let each note breathe. Maya looked at him skeptically. Really? Really? You know, I've been listening to you practice for months now, and the biggest change I've noticed isn't that you're playing faster or hitting more notes correctly. It's that you're playing with feeling. That piece just now, it made me think of sitting by a lake at night watching the moon reflect on the water. That's exactly what Clair de Lune was supposed to evoke. Moonlight on water. If Jim could hear that in her playing, even at a slow tempo, maybe she was capturing something essential about the music. The thing about performing, Jim continued, is that people don't come to hear perfection. They come to hear someone share something beautiful. And what you just played was definitely beautiful. After Jim left, Maya felt renewed motivation. She practiced the challenging passage again, but this time she focused on musical expression rather than just getting the notes right. She imagined moonlight dancing on water. Let the melody flow naturally instead of forcing it. Gradually, her fingers found their way through the complex rhythms. Not perfectly, and not at full tempo, but with musicality and confidence. The remaining weeks of preparation followed a pattern of steady progress, mixed with moments of panic. Some days Maya felt ready to perform for an audience of hundreds. Other days she wondered why she'd ever thought she could play Debussy in public, after less than 6 months of piano lessons. Mr. Chen helped her develop strategies for performance anxiety. They practiced having her play through the piece without stopping, even if she made mistakes. They worked on recovery techniques, how to keep going smoothly if she missed a note or lost her place. The most important thing, Mr. Chen told her, is to remember why you chose this piece. You didn't choose it because it was easy, or because you wanted to impress people. You chose it because it speaks to you emotionally. Trust that emotional connection and let it guide your performance. 2 weeks before the recital, Maya played Clair de Lune from beginning to end without any major mistakes. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of hesitation, places where her timing wasn't quite right, but it was recognizably beautiful music. You're ready, Mr. Chen said simply. Maya didn't feel ready. She felt like someone who had accidentally wandered into the deep end of a swimming pool and was somehow managing not to drown. But she was committed now. The recital was approaching whether she felt ready or not. In the final weeks, her practice routine intensified. She woke up early to practice before work, spent her lunch breaks visualizing the performance, and practiced late into the evening in the basement. The piece was becoming part of her muscle memory. Her fingers knew where to go even when her mind was distracted. But more importantly, Clair de Lune was becoming part of her emotional vocabulary. She understood now why Debussy had written it, what feelings he was trying to capture. When she played it well, she could transport herself to that moonlit lake Jim had described, could feel the peace and beauty that the music was meant to convey. Maya realized that preparing for this recital had taught her as much about herself as it had about piano. She discovered that she was capable of far more dedication and hard work than she'd ever imagined. She'd learned that perfectionism wasn't the same as excellence, and that sometimes the most beautiful performances came from taking risks and trusting her instincts. Most importantly, she'd learned that growth required stepping outside her comfort zone. 6 months ago, the idea of performing in public would have been unthinkable. Now, with 1 week left until the recital, she was nervous but no longer terrified. She was ready to share her music with the world. The day of the recital arrived with an unexpected snowfall. Maya woke up to find her apartment windows covered with delicate white crystals, and she took it as a good sign. The world looked magical, transformed into something beautiful overnight, just like her relationship with music had been. She'd taken the day off work to prepare mentally for the evening performance. Her routine included a light practice session in the morning, a relaxing walk in the snow-covered park, and an early dinner with Priya, who had driven in from the suburbs to attend the recital. You seem calmer than I expected, Priya observed over their pre-performance meal. I thought you'd be a nervous wreck. I was for weeks, Maya admitted. But this morning I realized something. I've already accomplished what I set out to do. 6 months ago I couldn't play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Tonight I'm going to perform Debussy. Win or lose, that's pretty amazing. When did you become so zen about this stuff? Maya laughed. I think piano lessons have been therapy in disguise. All that practice in the basement, learning to be patient with mistakes, working through frustration. It's changed how I handle stress in general. They arrived at the community center an hour before the performance. Maya wanted time to warm up and get comfortable with the piano they'd be using. The recital was being held in the main auditorium, which was larger than she'd expected. About 60 folding chairs faced a small stage with a beautiful black grand piano at the center. Maya walked onto the stage and sat at the piano bench. The instrument was significantly nicer than the digital piano from her lessons or the old upright in the basement. The keys had perfect weight and responsiveness, and the sound was rich and full. She played through a few scales to get accustomed to the touch, then ran through the opening of Clair de Lune. The acoustics of the room made her playing sound more professional than she'd ever heard it. For the first time, she began to understand what Mr. Chen meant about the importance of a good instrument. Other students began arriving with their families. Maya recognized most of them from the community center, people she'd seen in various classes over the years. There was Mrs. Rodriguez from the watercolor painting group, teenage twins from the drama club, and several parents she knew from the children's music classes. Mr. Chen gathered all the performers backstage to go over the program. There were 12 students performing, ranging in age from 8 to 72. Maya was scheduled to play ninth, which gave her time to settle in, but not so long that she'd work herself into a panic. Remember, Mr. Chen told the group, this isn't a competition. It's a celebration. Each of you has worked hard to prepare something beautiful, and tonight you get to share that with people who care about you. Trust your preparation and enjoy the experience. The recital began with 8-year-old Tommy playing Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, the same piece Maya had struggled with during her first month of lessons. His performance was charming, with a few missed notes but plenty of enthusiasm. The audience clapped warmly, and Maya remembered why community recitals were special. It wasn't about perfection. It was about celebrating progress and sharing joy. The performances that followed were a delightful mix of skill levels and musical styles. A teenage girl played a beautiful Bach invention. An elderly gentleman performed a jazz standard he'd arranged himself. Two sisters played a piano duet that made everyone smile. Maya watched from the side of the stage, feeling her nervousness gradually transform into excitement. Each performer brought something unique to their piece: personality, emotion, individual interpretation. She began to understand that her performance of Clair de Lune would be her own version, reflecting her personal journey with the music. When her turn arrived, Maya walked to the piano feeling surprisingly calm. She adjusted the bench height, positioned her hands on the keys, and took a moment to center herself. The audience was quiet and attentive. In that moment of silence before beginning, Maya thought about everything that had brought her to this point. The gift certificate from Priya that had started it all. The frustrating early lessons when her fingers wouldn't cooperate. The breakthrough in the basement when she'd learned to feel the music instead of just playing notes. The long hours of practice preparing for this moment. She began with the soft, mysterious opening of Clair de Lune. The first notes floated out into the auditorium like whispered secrets. Maya felt the familiar magic of the piece taking hold, the way Debussy's harmonies could transport listeners to another world. As she played, Maya became aware that something special was happening. The audience was completely still, drawn into the spell of the music. She could feel their attention like a warm presence, encouraging rather than judging. The piece built through its various sections: the gentle opening theme, the more passionate middle section, the return to tranquility. Maya's fingers found their way through passages that had once seemed impossible. The difficult arpeggios flowed smoothly. The delicate melody sang out clearly above the accompaniment. Most importantly, Maya felt completely connected to the music. She wasn't thinking about technique or worried about making mistakes. She was simply sharing something beautiful that she'd learned to love. When she reached the final, ethereal notes that fade away like moonlight disappearing behind clouds, the auditorium remained silent for several seconds. Then the applause began, not polite recital clapping, but genuine enthusiasm. Maya looked out at the audience and saw faces full of surprise and appreciation. She spotted Priya in the third row, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mr. Chen was beaming from the side of the stage. Even people she didn't know looked moved by what they'd just heard. As she stood to bow, Maya heard someone in the audience whisper, "That was professional quality. How long has she been playing?" Walking back to her seat, Maya felt like she was floating. She'd done it. She'd performed a challenging piece of classical music in front of a room full of people. And not only had she not embarrassed herself, she'd actually moved them. The remaining performances passed in a blur of contentment. Maya found herself listening with new appreciation for each student's unique musical journey. The shy teenager who played a simple folk song with touching sincerity. The retired teacher who tackled an ambitious Chopin mazurka. The young father who performed a song he'd written for his daughter. After the final performance, people began mingling in the lobby. Maya was overwhelmed by the number of people who approached her to comment on her playing. "That was absolutely beautiful," said a woman she didn't recognize. "I've heard that piece performed many times, but your interpretation was so heartfelt." "How long have you been studying piano?" asked another audience member. "You have such a natural musical sense." Mrs. Rodriguez from the watercolor class was particularly enthusiastic. "My dear, that was stunning. I had no idea we had such a talented musician in our community center family." Even some of the other performers complimented her playing. Rosa, who had performed earlier in the evening, pulled Maya aside. "I can't believe you've only been playing for 6 months," she said. "When you started in the beginner class, I never would have imagined." "That was concert-level playing tonight." Mr. Chen approached with a broad smile. "Maya, I'm so proud of you. Not just for the technical achievement, but for the musical maturity you showed tonight. You played with the kind of emotional depth that takes some people years to develop." "I almost can't believe I actually did it," Maya said. 6 months ago, I was terrified of playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in front of 5 other students. And tonight you moved an entire audience with one of the most beautiful pieces in the classical repertoire. You should be very proud." As Maya drove home with Priya, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not just because she'd successfully performed a difficult piece, but because she'd discovered capabilities she never knew she possessed. "That was incredible," Priya said. "I mean, I knew you'd been practicing a lot, but I had no idea you'd gotten that good. Mom and Dad are going to flip when I tell them." Maya smiled, watching the snow continue to fall outside the car windows. The world still looked magical, but now she felt like she was part of that magic instead of just observing it. She'd started piano lessons as a reluctant beginner who was convinced she had no musical talent. Tonight she'd performed as a confident musician who had something meaningful to share with the world. The transformation was complete, but Maya sensed it was also just the beginning. The week following the recital felt surreal. Maya returned to her normal routine at the accounting firm, but everything seemed different now. She carried herself with a new kind of confidence, and several co-workers commented that she seemed more relaxed and energetic than they'd seen her in years. "You're practically glowing," Janet said during their coffee break. "The piano lessons are really agreeing with you." Maya smiled, thinking about the enthusiastic applause from the recital audience. "I think I've found something I'm genuinely passionate about." "That's wonderful. Not everyone gets to discover a hidden talent like that." The word talent still felt strange to Maya. She'd spent most of her life thinking of herself as competent, but not particularly gifted at anything creative. The idea that she might actually have natural musical ability was still sinking in. That evening, she had her first lesson since the recital. Mr. Chen was waiting with a stack of new sheet music and an excited expression. "How are you feeling about the performance?" he asked. "Like I accomplished something I never thought possible," Maya replied honestly, "but also like I want to do it again." "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, because I have a proposition for you." Mr. Chen explained that the community center was planning a special concert series featuring local musicians. They wanted to showcase the talent within their own programs, and after hearing Maya's performance, they'd asked if she would be interested in participating. "It would be a solo performance," he said. "About 20 minutes of music. You could choose pieces you love, put together a small program that represents your musical journey." Maya felt a familiar flutter of nervousness, but this time it was mixed with excitement rather than terror. "When would this be?" 3 months from now. "Enough time to prepare properly, but not so long that you lose momentum." Maya thought about the audience at the recital, how engaged and appreciative they'd been, how good it felt to share something beautiful with people who truly listened. The idea of a longer performance was intimidating but also thrilling. "I'd love to do it," she said, They spent the lesson discussing possible repertoire. Maya wanted to include Clair de Lune, since it had become such an important piece in her development. Mr. Chen suggested adding a Chopin waltz, perhaps the minute waltz she'd been working on in secret months ago. They also talked about including something more contemporary, maybe a piece by a living composer that would show her versatility. The beautiful thing about putting together a program, Mr. Chen explained, is that you get to tell a story through music. Each piece contributes to an overall narrative about who you are as a musician. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into preparation with renewed enthusiasm. She worked on polishing her technique, expanding her repertoire, and developing her own interpretive voice. The basement piano became her laboratory for musical experimentation, but the most significant change was in how other people began to see her. Word about her recital performance had spread through the community center network. People she barely knew would stop her in the hallway to ask about her playing. The director of the center mentioned that several people had inquired about taking piano lessons after hearing her perform. "You've inspired quite a few people," Mr. Chen told her. "There's something powerful about seeing an adult beginner achieve what you've achieved. It makes other people believe they might have hidden talents too." This revelation hit Maya unexpectedly hard. She'd been so focused on her own musical journey that she hadn't considered how it might affect others. The idea that her transformation from reluctant student to confident performer could inspire other people to take creative risks felt like a tremendous responsibility and privilege, too. Months into preparing for her solo concert, Maya received an email that changed everything. A local piano teacher named Mrs. Williams had attended the recital and been impressed by Maya's performance. She was wondering if Maya might be interested in teaching beginning students. "I have a waiting list of adult students who are looking for someone who understands the challenges of learning piano later in life," Mrs. Williams wrote. "Your recent journey from beginner to performer makes you uniquely qualified to encourage others who are just starting out." Maya stared at the email in disbelief. Teaching piano? She'd been playing for less than a year. How could she possibly teach anyone else? But as she thought about it more, Maya realized she did have something valuable to offer. She understood the frustration of adult beginners because she'd been one herself. She knew how to work through the self-doubt and perfectionism that often held adult students back. She'd learned strategies for efficient practice and building confidence. Most importantly, she could serve as living proof that it was never too late to develop musical skills. Maya met with Mrs. Williams the following week. The conversation revealed just how much Maya's musical journey had resonated with the local community. "After your recital performance, I had 6 people contact me about starting piano lessons," Mrs. Williams explained. "They all said the same thing. If Maya could learn to play like that in 6 months, maybe they could too. But my studio is full, and these students specifically asked for someone who could relate to their situation as adult beginners." "I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach," Maya said hesitantly. "You're more qualified than you think. Technical knowledge can be learned, but understanding the emotional journey of adult music education, that can't be taught. You have that understanding through personal experience." Mrs. Williams suggested that Maya start with just 1 or 2 students, focusing on complete beginners who needed encouragement more than advanced technical instruction. She offered to mentor Maya through the teaching process and provide guidance on lesson planning and pedagogy. Maya agreed to try it, starting with 2 students after her solo concert. The concert itself was a triumph that exceeded even the recital performance. Maya had chosen a program that told the story of her musical awakening. The minute waltz that had first challenged her in the basement, Clair de Lune that had taught her about emotional expression, and a contemporary piece by a local composer that represented her growing confidence as a musical interpreter. The audience was larger this time, nearly 100 people, including many who had heard about her remarkable progress through word of mouth. Maya performed with a poise and musical maturity that would have been unimaginable when she'd first walked into that beginner piano class. But the most meaningful moment came after the concert, when a woman in her 50s approached Maya during the reception. "I haven't touched a piano since I was 12 years old," the woman said. "My teacher back then made me feel like I had no talent, so I quit. But listening to you tonight, hearing how expressive and beautiful your playing is, knowing that you just started learning, well, it makes me think maybe I gave up too soon." "It's never too late," Maya found herself saying. I'm proof of that. As Maya drove home that night, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a reluctant gift certificate. She'd started piano lessons as a favor to her sister, convinced she had no musical ability. Now she was a performer and about to become a teacher, inspiring others to pursue their own musical dreams. The accounting job was still there, still important for paying the bills, but music had become the center of her life, the thing that gave her days meaning and purpose. She'd discovered not just a hidden talent, but a hidden version of herself, someone who was brave enough to take risks, patient enough to work through challenges, and generous enough to share her gifts with others. Maya realized that the most stunning revelation wasn't that she could play piano well after 6 months of lessons. It was that she'd spent 28 years underestimating her own potential. Music had shown her that she was capable of far more than she'd ever imagined, not just musically, but in every aspect of her life. As she pulled into her apartment parking lot, Maya smiled, thinking about her first 2 piano students, who would start lessons the following week. She couldn't wait to share with them what she'd learned, that everyone has hidden talents waiting to be discovered, that growth happens when you step outside your comfort zone, and that the most beautiful music comes not from perfection, but from the courage to express your authentic self. The girl who had once been afraid to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in front of 5 other students was now ready to help others find their own musical voices. And that transformation, Maya knew, was just the beginning of a much larger symphony she was learning to compose with her life.